Football season. Officially, this is our 2014 NFL preview. We're giving you everything you need to know. Kerry Champion here with Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, all in-house for this.
It's good to see you.
I tried to tell y'all I was going to be in the house.
He did say that yesterday.
Hey.
I told you I was going to be in the house.
You said that yesterday.
Yes.
He did not lie to you. He did not let you down.
Are you ready for some football?
He's not.
I am.
Yes.
My chair's,
yes, I am. I'm always ready.
Oh.
My chair's too low.
They were supposed to take care of that before the show started.
And that's all right.
And they slipped up.
All right, so let's get to it, folks. Football season officially kicks off tonight. Packers at Seahawks. We will get to that game in just a few moments. The guys will make their division picks. I'm excited about that. Conference winners and who will win Super Bowl 49. Will the Seahawks make it back to the bowl, or will the Broncos erase that sad performance? All to be discussed. But first, let's talk about it. That bad man. Thursday Night Football, 8:30 Eastern. Aaron Rodgers, the Power Panel pick for the most valuable player this season. Head to Seattle, where he and the Packers are 5.5-point underdogs. The last time these two teams met, the Hail Mary happened for the Packers. You remember that? The Packers The Packers look as if they could win their division, but tonight is a very tough ask for them to get a win in CenturyLink Field. So, Skip Bayless, you first. Who wins the game?
Stephen A. Smith. Your Green Bay Packers, and more specifically, that bad man that is Aaron Rodgers, will find themselves and himself wrong place, wrong time tonight at CenturyLink. I think by the end of tonight's game, Aaron Rodgers will feel like he's just pretty bad. And as you know, and I'm about to remind you, for visiting teams, no matter how good they might be, and I think Green Bay's pretty good, night games in Seattle can be nightmares. See last year, San Francisco and New Orleans on night games during the regular season. See San Francisco 2 years ago, 42-13 at Seattle that they lost. I've said all preseason, I don't think Seattle's defense will be quite as dominating without a Chris Clemens on one end and Red Bryant on the other end in their veteran leadership.
Right.
But I still think it's going to be the best defense in the National Football League. And especially with Earl Thomas, who is my pick for Defensive Player of the Year, roaming in that secondary, making plays all over the field. And what did you tell me happened to you at the ESPYs?
Oh, yeah.
They rolled up on the Legion come up behind you?
The Legion.
When Cam Chancellor up, did he put a little forearm up to your head and say, I'm here?
He likes me.
No, he likes it.
There's no reason for him to be that way with me. He's always like, man, I ain't got nothing to say about Cam Chancellor.
Cam, you're great.
I'm not trying to get hurt.
Okay. Now, here's the punchline to my argument. Seattle's offense will be, I think, significantly better than it was last year. Percy Harvin is back, and I think he will stay back this time, and he is my pick for Comeback Player of the Year.
Okay.
And Russell Wilson through the preseason, I'm going to say it one last time, he's special. He's playing at a Peyton-esque level with almost completing 80% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he ran for 3 touchdowns in the preseason. So now we're back to, can Green Bay stop Russell Wilson? That unit ranked tied for 24th in points allowed last year. And you're here to tell me that Julius Peppers is going to change life in Green Bay at age 34? I don't think so. Are you here to tell me that their first-round pick, Clinton Dix, is going to change secondary life in Green Bay? I don't think, not yet, not tonight. So now we all know, as we heard, that rookie Corey Linsley will have to start at center, protecting A-Rod's front side.
Right.
And that offensive line's a little patchwork for Green Bay right now. So I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to go down 8 times in the first half the way he did in 2012. But I think he's in for a long, rough night. I think A-Rod will feel like he's C or D Rod by the end of the night.
Oh, boy.
Because it's going to be a rough one. And I think you know it. I think you feel it. You said 5.5-point favorites. I think Seattle wins going away, 31-13.
Wow.
I respectfully disagree with you. I don't blame you for making that pick. I'm not going to sit there and mess with you too much about it. They're in Seattle. It's the opener for the season. Obviously, they're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions. It's the first time they're playing in front of their home crowd for a regular season game in the aftermath of all of that. They are going to be hyped. They're going to be psyched. They're going to be fired up. There is no doubt about it that Green Bay has its work cut out for them. But if there's anybody that can handle it, is the bad man that he is, and Aaron Rodgers, who I believe to be the best quarterback in football. He's just simply that gifted. Clearly the most gifted quarterback in football. Nobody's going to deny that outside of the person sitting across from me who remains nameless. In the end, what it comes down to is simply this. What it comes down to is this. It is, I will acknowledge to you that game one is not indicative of how this entire season will go for Green Bay, but I don't see them winning tonight either. I don't see them getting blown out, however. I do consider it to be a dogfight, but I'm more along the lines
You're saying dogfight?
I'm more along the lines of 27-20. I'm thinking Seattle's going to score 20. I think they could put up 27 points. I'm incredibly impressed with what I'm seeing from Russell Wilson. You got Doug Baldwin. You got Percy Harvin. We saw Percy Harvin the minimal amount of games that he played last year. We saw what he did in the Super Bowl. He makes a difference on special teams. He makes a difference when he touches the ball because of his speed. You drafted a rookie in Paul Richardson who is considered to have, Percy Harvin type speed. Okay, so when I look at it from that perspective, and then I see dude in beast mode named Marshawn Lynch, I'm just saying to myself, I expect the defense to be who they are, but I also expect Seattle's defense to be better. Here's why I think it's still going to be closer than what you give it credit for, however. I do believe that Clinton Dix will make a difference because they got nothing from the free safety position in Green Bay last year. It was atrocious. That's why he was picked 21st overall. You got to expect that Clay Matthews and those boys are going to be ready to some degree. Their defense over the last couple of years have been relatively awful, yet and still Green Bay has been in every game. Why? Because of the bad man himself, Aaron Rodgers. Then when you combine that with the fact that even though your offensive line is suspect, and I do have my concerns, it was suspect last year, it was suspect the year before that, and you didn't have a running game. Now you have a running game in Eddie Lacy, okay? You also still have James Starks. What I love about Eddie Lacy, Skip Bayless, is something I haven't heard you nor anybody else bring up, and that is this. Usually when you see an elite running back in this game, they don't have an elite quarterback. You look at LaShawn McCoy was an aberration because Nick Foles really played well last year, but that was clearly an aberration. When you look at AP, I ponder what he had to work with, and I don't need to go any further than that. You look at some of the other elite runners in there, Jamal Charles in Kansas City. Yeah, Alex Smith showed up last year, played relatively well, but we all looked at him as a game manager. You just rarely see a team that has a top 5 running back with a top 3
How do you explain
quarterback.
That?
With a top 3 quarterback. I can't explain it, but I will tell you this. Eddie Lacy, based on his talent, there are people that looked at him and felt that he was, before the draft, that he was a better talent than Mark Ingram or Trent Richardson out of Alabama, and he proved that last year. You remember, we got a concussion the first play of a week 2 against Washington. It wasn't the same sense, still rushed for over 1,000 yards. He's healthy now, unless he gets a concussion tonight, which is possible. We know that against the Legion of Boom. I'm going to assume that's not going to happen. I expect Eddie Lacy to make some noise. The combination of Eddie Lacy, knowing that Aaron Rodgers, knowing that he's got an Eddie Lacy with the Starks behind him, okay? Plus, you've got Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. Jordy Nelson, new contract. Randall Cobb playing for one. I like their chances to make this very interesting. I still think they're going to lose because I think too much is up against them, but I do not believe it's going to be a 31-13 blowout. I think it's going to come down to a play or two in the fourth quarter. In the end, the Legion of Boom will respond. They will hold down the fort, and they will save week 1, the opening of the NFL season for the Seahawks. The Seahawks will win tonight 27-20.
27-20.
It sounded to me like you're making a strong case for 31-13.
No.
And then at the last second you said, but it's going to be a dogfight.
No, I said Aaron Rodgers, running game, Nelson, Cobb, and the bad man that
time out. He just made a really good point. It's rare that you see a quarterback running back combination that's top tier. You asked him to explain that. Can you explain that?
I told you why Aaron Rodgers will not win MVP, because I have so much respect for Eddie Lacy, and so does that team and that staff. So Eddie Lacy's going to get the football a whole lot and take it out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. A lot of people back to my Dallas days. Was Emmitt Smith not the best running back in football? Well, Troy Aikman was pretty good, but look at Troy Aikman's numbers. They're pretty pedestrian because he didn't get to throw it very much.
Yeah, but I don't look at Mike McCarthy as somebody that's going to run Eddie Lacy like that, especially in this concussion-filled era in the NFL. I don't see that happening, number one. And number two, I'm assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to make big plays. You may not throw 40 times. You may only throw 30 times, but it still doesn't mean you're not going to pass for over 350 yards a game. That's what I'm saying. That's the difference.
Okay.
I expect big plays.
I expect 31-13.
I expect 27-20.
Next.
Listen, Chuck just sent me a note, you guys. I thought I'd share this with you. Our managing editor, Chuck, he said everyone's keeping an eye on penalties this season and how they will be officiated. John Perry is the referee for tonight's Packers-Seahawks game. Perry's crew caught the 5th most penalties in 2013. So let's see if that affects the outcome or perhaps the flow of one game. Chuck, I'm giving you a shout out. Thanks for that.
Why didn't he send me the note?
Well, because you don't have a computer. This is for me.
Well, not only that, you're not the moderator.
Yeah.
What you going to do, read the news?
Yeah. I would like to. I want to be the moderator just one day.
Here you go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Give it to him. Give it to him.
Division breakdowns for the season, guys. Here we go. Up first, a favorite for us on this show, NFC East. The Cowboys have a loss to division rival with a playoff berth on the line for the last 3 years, including last season. This season, the Eagles are projected to win the division with the Giants next, with the Cowboys and Redskins pulling up the rear. I'll give it to you, Stephen A. Smith. Who wins the division?
I'm rolling with the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm shocked.
Bayless.
I'm shocked.
Listen. Shady McCoy is one of the top 2 running backs in the game of football. Easily top 3, probably top 2. Nick Foles, I do not expect to throw just 2 interceptions this year. I think it'll be worse than that. It doesn't matter. I still think that he will have a good season. I think that we've underestimated Chip Kelly and the kind of impact his offensive genius was going to have on the game of football. I don't believe that the NFL has him figured out yet. And as a result, I think that he's going to do some damage offensively. Jeremy Maclin returns. You did lose Deshaun Jackson. I understand that. But you still have Brent Selleck. You still have Jeremy Maclin. You still have Riley Cooper. You don't have the distraction of your wide receiver being caught at a country music concert, spewing racial epithets, getting himself, exiled from the team so he can go through a weekend of counseling and all of this other stuff before coming back and playing for the team. I think absent those distractions, the combination of what they have on the offensive side of the ball, the fact that I think that you got an additional year under your belt, you've improved a little bit defensively. I'm just of the mindset that combined with the weakness that exists within the rest of the NFC East leads me to believe that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the division. Now we get to the wild card. And I've struggled because I'm thinking about some of the teams coming out of it, and it's really no need to mention it. I was thinking about the Washington Redskins getting a wild card spot, but I'm sorry, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the NFC East somehow, some way will manage to beat up on each other as they always do. I think RG3 and the Redskins will have a better season. They will obviously not be 3-13, but that doesn't mean they're going to be 11-5 or 10-6 either. I think a team wins the division with a 10-6 record, which I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will have either 10 or 11 games. I think the next team will win about 9 games, which is the Washington Redskins, but I don't think that's going to be enough to get to the postseason because some other teams within the NFC. So as a result, they're on the outside looking in. And don't get me started on the New York Giants with this new coordinator, McAdoo. He and Eli Manning don't seem to be sinking. Eli Manning with the receivers, Victor Cruz and the crew don't seem to be sinking. I think that the Giants, in all likelihood, will end up having an awful season. And I think the Dallas Cowboys may go down as one of the worst defenses in NFL history. They will make noise week after week after week. They will be losing 42-40. They will be losing 50-45. They will be Dallas is going to give up over 35 points a game.
Oh, boy.
They are just that god awful defensively. They will come in dead last within the NFC East division, and that is going to be that.
My turn.
Your turn.
And you make, as Herm always says, you make some great points, Stephen A. My turn. I'm rolling with the No, I'm not. I'm rolling with the No, I'm not.
You are. I can't. Skip, come on.
You ready for this?
I'm listening.
Oh, boy.
I'm rolling with the Dallas Cowboys by default.
To win the division?
I'm doing it. I am doing it. I am doing it. He fell off the stage. He fell off the stage.
I almost fell up the steps. Are you telling me? You really? Do I have to sit here and listen to this?
Yes, come back here. Listen to my argument.
Over here.
I'm about to convince you. I'm about to convince you. Sit down and listen to me.
Stand over here.
Listen to the wisdom. Listen to the wisdom.
The Dallas Cowboys are going to win the division.
Yes. Let me explain why.
I'm glad you didn't hurt yourself. Have a seat.
Okay.
Come on.
Now, I
Let's get some
realize.
order.
throughout the preseason, I've said again and again on this show, the Dallas Cowboys, my Dallas Cowboys, have 6-10 written all over them. So I went to bed last night, and I'm thinking, you know, I can't make a case for Philly without Deshaun. I just don't love Philly. I don't love Nick Foles. I don't think he'll be Nick Foles 27-2 as he was last year. I can't make a case for my guy RG3. I still love him. But day after day, he holds media sessions in which he puts himself on the couch. He did it again yesterday. It's not RG3 anymore. It's RGIII, because all he talks about is himself. All he talks about is his feelings. His new coach, he's maybe his old coach, and he was heartbroken over the loss. I'm sick and tired of it. He's not right in his head right now. We didn't see one flash of the old RG3 through this new preseason with Jay Gruden. I'm sorry, I'm with you. I can't even pick either one of those teams to make the playoffs. I'm sorry, your Eagles are out of the playoffs. So by default, I start thinking about my Dallas Cowboys. And usually, when I go out on a limb on this show, I am solo out on that limb. When I said Tim Tebow would take over a 1-4 team and go 7-4, everybody thought I was the one guy who was nuts. When I said Johnny Manziel would win at Tuscaloosa, you laughed at me. When I said last year that my Spurs would rebound from the Ray Allen shot and come back and win it all, everybody said, oh, stop it. And they won it all. I got an assist from a friend this morning in USA Today, a guy you know very well. Jarrett Bell, USA Today's NFL columnist.
Don't tell me
a panelist on ESPN's Football NFL Insider show.
What did he say?
He picked the Dallas Cowboys to win the division. And when I saw that this morning, I thought, you know what? I should have the guts to do the same thing because I don't love anybody else in the division. And I'm going to remind you, my Dallas Cowboys, even with Kyle Orton at quarterback last year in the final game, almost beat the Philadelphia Eagles to sweep the division. They went 5-1 last year, and I'm pretty sure they can go 5-1 again this year. And I'm looking at the first 3 games. They open at home with San Francisco. The 49ers are reeling right now. I'm going to pick Dallas to win that game. Can they go to Tennessee and win? It wouldn't shake me up. It wouldn't shock me if they went to St. Louis and won the 3rd game. And all of a sudden, they're going to start getting healthy. They'll get Anthony Spencer back. They'll get the new DeMarcus back, as in Lawrence. They'll get Orlando Scandrick off suspension. They'll get Jakar Hamilton off suspension. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, hey, wait a second. This is going to be one of the top, if not the best offense. Maybe Peyton's will be, but it's going to be 1-2 with Romo's offense for the most explosive in the league. And then we're talking about Rod Marinelli's defense. I respect the heck out of Rod Marinelli as a motivator. Are they awful personnel-wise? Well, maybe they're sick and tired of hearing how awful they are. Maybe they'll start overachieving. And Stephen A. Smith, am I right about this? Isn't it every year on this show, you've been a part of it now for 4 years, isn't it right that every year 2 or 3 analysts pick the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl? How many are picking Dallas this year to win the Super Bowl? Nobody is. Am I right about that? Remember Eric Mangini, our friend, now with the 49ers 2 years ago? He shocked us. He picked Dallas to win the Super Bowl. You said, oh, come on, and it turned out to be a ridiculous pick because they've played ridiculous football over the last 4 years.
Everything positive that's been prognosticated about the Dallas Cowboys over the last 4 years, I've been proven absolutely right, and those folks have been proven a bit lost, caught up in the sauce of the Dallas Cowboys and the hype machine that is Jerry Jones.
Okay, so my point is, I think this Dallas team in this division, which is highly winnable, can go 10-6. Because if you look down the schedule, can they go win at Jacksonville? Sure they can. Can they beat Houston at home? Sure they can. Well, if they go 5-1 in the division because they match up so well with the division teams, didn't they? Help me out here. Didn't Dallas win at Philly last year 17-3? How do you explain that?
That's true.
Okay.
It's very difficult to explain that. But the Dallas Cowboys were not as awful last year as they're predicted to be this year on the defensive side of the ball. Any plausible argument that you have in your favor strictly resides around this schedule. When I look at the schedule right here, Tennessee, St. Louis, Houston with their no quarterback having themselves. All right, the Giants are a mess. We don't know about Washington on Monday Night Football. But I also see San Francisco. I see New Orleans. I see a game at Seattle. I see a Monday night game against Washington. I see Arizona on this schedule. That's 5 games right there. They're at Chicago, at Philadelphia, at Washington. They're losing 2 of those games. So when I think about the Dallas Cowboys, if you want to make a legitimate argument that they could have yet a 4th consecutive 8-8 season, I'm with you there. I'm willing to surmise that, you know what, I'm willing to modify my position to say, you know what, it's possible they could go 8-8. But to win the division and go to the playoffs, these boys are allergic to prosperity, Skip Bayless. It makes no sense what you're saying. It makes no sense that anything like this could happen for the Dallas Cowboys. There's a black cat running around that franchise. I'm trying to tell you something right now, and I'm going to say it again. I didn't want to go there, but you know where I'm going. What are the Dallas Cowboys? An accident waiting to happen.
I haven't heard that in months.
It's been a while. When you think that something can't go wrong, they find a way. Skip, you sound very plausible. Your arguments are solid. I'm not knocking you but then again, over the last 4 years, how many arguments haven't been solid? People that make arguments on behalf of the Cowboys, they always do. And what do? I sit back and I say, just relax.
Let it happen.
Let it happen. It's going to happen. I'll never forget. I'm going to remind my audience of this. They're playing the Denver Broncos. I'm sitting there in my crib, chilling, okay? Chilling. And I'm going like this, relax. Just take your time. Don't even worry about it. You understand what I'm saying? It's going to happen. Just give it. How much time is left in the game? 3 minutes? Don't worry about it. They'll come through for you. Don't make no mistake. What happens? Tony Romo throws an interception. This is what they do. This is what they do.
First year,
it'll happen again.
What, 10 years? Nobody likes the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody's picking them to do anything. Only Jarrett Bell and I.
10 years?
I don't know, 15 years?
You sure?
Yeah.
It might have been the last 10. Because I'm trying to tell you right now, there's been plenty of years where people haven't expected anything from the Cowboys, and they've lived up to expectations, giving you nothing.
We got a wrap. Go ahead.
Yeah. All I know is this could be the fan in me speaking, but I just have a feeling this is going to be different this year. I just have a feeling.
Woo! Bayless has
and you know what? And you know what? When I was making my case,
you're already thinking about
I was looking in his eyes, and I know him better than he knows himself.
Oh, really?
I do.
Really?
And I was looking in his eyes, and his eyes were giving me that, you know what?
He might be right.
He's making it.
About that Cowboy?
Yeah.
All right, so Bayless reverses his 6-10 and says the Cowboys are going 10-6. He believes they will win the division. Stephen A says it will be the Eagles. By default. Your division winners play Sunday. It's Jacksonville Jags at Philadelphia Eagles and 49ers at Cowboys. So you guys will be able to talk about that on Monday. Preseason talk suggests that it will be virtually impossible to beat the defending Super Bowl champions. The Seahawks are the favorites to win the NFC West, but the last 8 Super Bowl champions either failed to make the playoffs or win a playoff game the following season. Despite a decimated defense, 49ers are still projected to make it to the playoffs, while the Cardinals and the Rams pull up the rear. So we are picking NFC West. Skip Bayless, who wins the division?
Stephen A. Smith. The Seattle Seahawks run away with this division. I believe the Seahawks will sweep a division that a month or so ago was considered by far the strongest in the National Football League. And then we know what started happening in San Francisco and the loss of Sam Bradford and St. Louis, on and on.
Got it.
I think that Seattle is so good, so much better than the rest of its division opponents, that Seattle will go 15-1 this year. And the only loss I have Seattle having on its schedule is the second game of the year at San Diego, which is my surprise team this year. We'll talk about that division and the Broncos in a little bit here.
Sure.
But I think that there'll be a little letdown after the big opening night tonight on a Thursday night, and then 10 days later, I think the Seahawks will lose at San Diego, and it will become their only loss of the regular season. So, again, San Francisco, we've talked ad nauseum about all the problems and losses on defense, and we've talked ad nauseum about how Colin Kaepernick has not looked like Colin Kaepernick throughout the preseason. The offense has been far more miss than hit. And in Arizona, Carson Palmer, to me, is more cold than hot. Okay. And when he's hot, he's pretty good. But he's statuesque in the pocket. They have a hard time protecting him. And on defense, I still think, despite what Calais Campbell told us yesterday, that the losses of Darnell Dockett and Darrell Washington are pretty big for a team that was the best run-stopping defense in the league last year. I don't think it will be this year. Mentioned no Bradford and St. Louis. I love the rest of the supporting cast around Sam Bradford, but That's going to be a tough one for Sean Hill. So, to me, Seattle running away.
You're right, and there's no intrigue here as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when I look at Arizona, I do love the fact that they acquired Valdir from Oakland, as your left tackle, because that's going to protect Carson Palmer's blind side. He's pretty damn good, and Oakland messed up by losing him, and I think that because he's going to help protect Carson Palmer will have more good days than bad. I don't like the fact that they lost Dockett, obviously, in Washington. Those are devastating blows to me as your linebacker, defensive end as well. I think that's going to be a devastating blow for Arizona. I do love the fact that Peterson, along with Antonio Cromartie back there, with Antonio Cromartie having something to prove, I think when you've got two potential lockdown corners that can do what they do, it's not going to the defense is not going to appear as devastated as we thought they would be. And Honey Badger is back as well. So I think that the defense can make some noise. I will agree with you, however, I still don't trust Carson Palmer. So that's my reason. I look at St. Louis, to me, they're totally irrelevant because they don't have a quarterback. Their defense is legit. They're big time. Their front four is big time. Their front seven is legit. They've got some questions in their secondary, but their defense is still going to be big time. I just believe that if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have an offense. And that's just the way that I look at it. That's why I'm not even considering St. Louis. They'll come in last place. Which brings me to San Francisco. San Francisco, not only did they lose Carlos Rogers, he's in Oakland now, Dante Whitner, he's in Cleveland now, but then you also have a situation with Aldon Smith being suspended, with now McDonald probably being gone, with Navarro Bowman not being back 100% healthy. I don't think that we should count San Francisco out in terms of Seattle going 15-1, sweeping the division. I think that I got to look at their schedule here. When exactly do they play Seattle again? Because it depends on how late in the season they meet. If I'm looking at San Francisco, I'm looking at the schedule here. They've got Seattle in week 13 to November 27th. Again, and then again, December 14th. So for me, San Francisco's winning one of those games. I believe one of those games they'll take them because they should have the crew back in order. Aldon Smith should be back by then. All right, Navarro Bowman should be back by then. And as a result of that, I think San Francisco would get one of those games from Seattle. So Seattle, I think, is more along the lines of 13-3 as opposed to 15-1. But I think the early season struggles that San Francisco inevitably will suffer from is going to cost them the division title. Colin Kaepernick is going to have to carry this load. He's going to have to do something early on. And I don't know if he's going to be capable of doing it early on. Not to mention the fact, remember last year, Harbaugh and those boys saved him a lot. They didn't have him running as much as he did his first year in the starting lineup because they wanted to make sure they saved him and protected him. I think the same happens now. Because of the way that things are in the NFL. And I think as a result of that, San Francisco is going to struggle early. So Seattle's definitely going to run away with the division. But I wouldn't say they're going to sweep the division like nobody's going to beat them. I could see Arizona beating them one game. I could see San Francisco beating them one game.
Okay, so my bottom line about this division, I have no other team making a wild card in this division.
Neither do I.
You don't have the 49ers making the playoffs?
Oh, I'm sorry, I do. I do have the 49ers making the playoffs. I apologize. Yes, I do.
I don't, because I think those other three teams will play rock, paper, scissors with each other and beat each other up enough that the 49ers are going to be in for a long year. And, you know, my favorite stat about this whole prediction show is that since 1990, when the playoffs expanded, every year, at least 5 teams that didn't make the playoffs the year before made the playoffs, except for 2012, when 4 teams that didn't make it the year before made it. Think about that. That's why this is the greatest league in the world. That's why it's so much fun to watch.
Because year to year, you don't know.
The stats are saying that 5 new teams are going to make the playoffs this year. Well, that means that 5 old teams can't make it. So I'm going to say Arizona, which should have made it last year and didn't, and San Francisco, which did make it last year, obviously, and was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, will not make it.
I'm picking San Francisco to be a wild card.
All right, both of the gentlemen say that the Seahawks will win the NFC West. Last season, it came down to the final week of the season to decide the NFC North. The Packers beat the Bears in Chicago for the division crown. Green Bay, favorite to win the division again. And according to Numberfire, the Lions have a better chance of getting into the playoffs than the Bears. Stephen A., your pick.
Needless to say, Aaron Rodgers, the bad man that he is, the best quarterback in football.
Second best.
Okay? The most talented quarterback in football. The Packers will win the NFC North for a 4th consecutive year. Obviously, unless Clay Matthews goes down and Clinton Dix gives you nothing as your new free safety at the rookie position, and you know, they just get nothing from the defensive side of the ball with A.J. Hawk and those boys. A.J. Hawk has stepped up his game a little bit more productive last year than normal.
Got a haircut, I know that.
Got a haircut.
More importantly.
Got a haircut, made a few big plays last year for the first time in his career. Fumble recoveries, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Interceptions. But I guess for me, I just look at Green Bay's defense needing to be decent. That's all that's required here, and the rest you just leave to Aaron Rodgers, Eddie Lacy, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and the crew. Green Bay will handle their business with with at least an 11-win season.
Okay.
Which brings me to the rest of the division. I understand that you love your Chicago Bears. Vanderbilt, Commodores, and Jay
It's
Cutler.
the year of.
Oh, please. The man is doing one playoff victory in 8 years. I'm not buying it. I know he's got Brandon Marshall, a stud, nothing but love for Brandon Marshall. Only problem I got with Brandon Marshall is that he wears those Jay Cutler pom-poms. That's the only problem I got with him, but I understand. That's where his loyalty lies. I get it. Alshon Jeffrey is a stud. He has emerged. He's big time. Martellus Bennett is no joke. Matt Forte is no joke. Trestman is a damn good coach on the offensive side of the ball. But the days of Air Coryell, back in the day when Dan Fouts was quarterback in the San Diego Chargers, and he had Kellen Winslow Sr. and Charlie Joyner and Chuck Muncie and those boys, and it was called Air Coryell, and they went to an AFC Championship game, and they would have went to the Super Bowl if they weren't playing in freezing Cincinnati temperatures in the AFC Championship game. Those days are over. So is the days of Dan Marino throwing a Mark Super Duper and Mark Clayton, but having no defense by Don Shula, refusing to provide him one to help him out. Those days are over. If you don't have a defense, you're not winning but so many games in the NFL. It's why the Dallas Cowboys will stink, and it's why the Chicago Bears are going to come up short. Not only are they not winning the division, Skip Bayless, they ain't making the playoffs. Windy City, second city, big-time sport town. Just wait for Derrick Rose and pray that he stays healthy. Because the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field ain't going to give you but so much to cheer about because their defense stinks. That's point number 2. Then you look, obviously, Minnesota, don't get me started with all of that. It's no waste of time. No waste of time, all right? I mean, talk to me when Bridgewater becomes a quarterback. Then I'll get interested in that. AP's the best running back in football. God bless him. My heart goes out to him because he has no help. Their defense was ranked 30th last year. I mean, come on now. I'm not thinking about the Minnesota Vikings. Brings me to the Detroit Lions. Schwartz is no longer the coach. There will be no 1-6 nosedive over the last 7 games of the regular season. There won't be 14 turnovers and 54.4% completions by Matt Stafford over the last 7 games. They have Stafford. They've got Megatron. They got Ebron, who they drafted, okay? You got Reggie Bush. You got Pettigrew returning, okay? You got Golden Tate, who you acquired from Seattle. I'm looking at them and I'm saying, okay, so that we know offensively they're going to be more disciplined this year. They're not going to sit there and be the headaches that they were last year because they got a coach that's not disguised as coordinator. And I look at that, and I look at defense, and I say 28th in sacks, 21st in turnovers last year, not good. They'll improve on that. But 1st and 3rd down in red zone efficiencies. I believe Detroit will be the wild card.
So you have Packers and Detroit.
That's right.
Okay, news flash. Jay Cutler and company will score huge points this year, and the defense will give up huge points, which is why the Chicago Bears are not making the playoffs this year.
Very fair.
They have 8-8 written all over them.
Wisdom.
I'm going to give your Packers the nod here. I give you your 11 wins. I say Green Bay goes 11-5, and I am completely with you on the Detroit Lions, bringing up the rear only slightly. And finishing second in this division with a 10-6 record and making the playoffs. For all the reasons you said, starting with Jim Caldwell, who I think will be the ice to Jim Schwartz's wildfire, because he was just sometimes raging out of control, as was his football team. They added Ehedegbo to the back end of their defense, and I like him at safety from the Ravens. So I think it will have a little more quality and character to it on the back end. You still have Sue and Fairley. That should be enough to make you a playoff defense to me. So I'm looking at Jim Caldwell to change the face of that franchise. I like them. And again, the Bears are out of the playoffs, and obviously Minnesota out of the playoffs.
All right, we leave it there. Let's switch conferences for just a moment. AFC North, shall we? To the Bengals. They made the playoffs each of the last 3 seasons, and they are favored to win the division this season as well. While the Steelers had a rough start last year, you guys remember that, 0-4, I believe it was. They almost made the playoffs, backing in, but they missed it. The Ravens and the Browns have the lowest expectations in the division. So, Stephen A., your pick out of the AFC North.
My pick, Skip Bayless, it should be the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
Been in the playoffs the last 3 years. Andy Dalton is good as long as you keep him out of the postseason. He actually looks like a respectable quarterback. A.J. Green is no joke.
Yep.
Offensively, we know these boys could put up points. Defensively, we know they have talent. I just don't have faith in Marvin Lewis. And maybe I'm biased. I'm holding it against him. I'll openly admit it.
Well, I mean, you're on record that he should have been dismissed.
Listen. I hope that Marvin Lewis is a head coach somewhere else someday, because he was an incredible defensive coordinator, and we know he's knowledgeable about the game of football. But I just don't believe it's fair that a man that coaches a franchise for 11 consecutive years and never wins a playoff game should remain its head coach. I'm not saying he shouldn't be a head coach, but it's just like with Lovie Smith. I'm glad Lovie Smith had the job and got the job in Tampa.
Yep.
But he didn't deserve to stay in Chicago after missing the playoffs 6 of the 9 years that he was there. I just don't believe that. And I don't believe that Marvin Lewis should remain the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals after being gone from there for 11 and not winning a playoff game for 11 consecutive years. Which brings me to the Baltimore Ravens. That ain't a problem with Harbaugh. Not only has he been to the playoffs, he's a Super Bowl champion. Last year, I think losing Peter at the tight end spot was a devastating loss for Flacco's #1 target. The fact that you got him back. You got Ray Rice, who's on a mission to have something to prove. You've got
after 2 games.
That's right. You got Torrey Smith and the crew ready to show up and make amends for last season. And they're over the departure of the great Ray Lewis, who was having a statue erected for him today, revealed rather, outside the stadium, all right, at around 11 o'clock. 11 to 1 p.m. today is the ceremony in Baltimore. I was supposed to be there, but I had to work. The point that I'm trying to make to you is Ray Lewis is gone. They're over those doldrums. I think the defense responds this year. I think Flacco responds this year. I think the Ravens win the division, which brings me to my Pittsburgh Steelers. I know they're young. I know they're young, particularly on the defensive side of the ball with Shays and those boys that they drafted. I like him a lot. I think he's got some upside. They had a turnover. It's going to take some time to gel. I understand that, but you still got Polamalu down there. I'm not sold on Ike Taylor. You all know that. But nevertheless, he still is experienced. I think he can provide some leadership in the locker room. I think the Steelers may be a bit risque, but I think their defense is going to be decent enough. And the offense, I believe, is going to be a juggernaut. I believe.
A juggernaut?
I really do. I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to have a big-time year, Skip Bayless. I truly believe that. And I'm just looking at Antonio Brown. I'm looking at this kid Wheaton, who's a speedster.
Haven't seen him yet.
Exactly.
He's ATB.
Listen, let me tell you something right now. I just think that he's got that kind of potential. As disgusted as I am with LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell, you get back to running the football, which is the Steelers' signature. It's going to keep the defense rested and fresh. And I think that's going to help them. I'm predicting that Mike Tomlin, who arguably has his job on the line with it because he's approaching the 3rd consecutive year where he may be missing the playoffs. I don't think it's fair, but it is what it is. I believe that the Steelers answer the call and they save it. They make the playoffs as a wild card.
You're speaking with your heart
you think
over
that's all
your
heart?
head. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't believe it. Listen, if I was speaking with my head, I'd pick Cincinnati. But my heart doesn't believe in Cincinnati. It doesn't believe in Cincinnati. They find a way. They're like a better version of the Cowboys. They find a way to mess it up when it counts.
Steelers have 8-8 written all over them. They're out of the playoffs. I believe that the Bengals and Ravens will tie atop this division at 10-6. I'm going to say the Bengals win the tiebreaker, so they win the division, but the Ravens make the playoffs. Mostly because of John Harbaugh. He's just too good. They're too well coached. I think they go 10-6 and make the playoffs. The Bengals obviously lost both coordinators.
Yes.
But Hugh Jackson's pretty good.
He
will
is.
step in for Jay Gruden. On the other side, Mike Zimmer, pretty good. But listen, the guy that you don't love, Marvin Lewis, he's still one of the top defensive coordinators in the game. That's what he does best.
Right.
So I'm thinking he's going to take back over the defensive side of the ball. They're just too loaded with talent. I'm sorry. Andy Dalton has been really good in the regular season. I'm going 10-6 in the playoffs.
I don't blame you for that. I just don't believe in Cincinnati.
Your head's telling you they can't do it.
My heart's telling me they'll find a way to disappoint you. Because it's not like I root against Marvin Lewis. I want him to win. But 11 years and you've never won a playoff game? I mean, that's just embarrassing. Seriously. I understand that ownership messes with you, but come on now. 11 years is 11 years.
The Broncos lost Super Bowl 48 and will try to become the first Super Bowl loser to win the Super Bowl the following season since the 1972 Dolphins. They're favored to win the division and return to the Super Bowl. Some key additions for them: DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, and T.J. Ward. Meanwhile, the Chargers and Chiefs fighting for that second spot in the AFC West. Skip, these are our predictions. I need your prediction.
Stephen A. Smith, when we had Dwight Freeney on the show, as both of you will remember yesterday,
Yes.
he sold me. He said that he believes that his team is deep and loaded and veteran enough to be a Super Bowl team. I'm not going to go quite that far, but I believe this team is good enough and confident enough to dethrone Denver in this division. I'm going to go Chargers finishing 13-3. To Denver's 12-4. I still have the Broncos as a wild card team, but I have the Chargers as my surprise team of the year because San Diego, if you notice coming down the stretch last year, they did win at Denver in Week 15. And in the two losses, including the playoff loss, they came within a touchdown. So they play very confidently against Peyton and company. And once Phillip Rivers got on the same page with a new coach in Mike McCoy last year, down the stretch, they were pretty good together. Phillip Rivers became a top-tier quarterback. So they added Donald Brown to Ryan Matthews in the run game. As you already know, Keenan Allen's a stud, man.
Yes, he is.
He's hard to defend.
He helped me last year.
I know he did. And Brandon Flowers, they added at cornerback on defense. So all of a sudden, I just think it's their turn and their time, as Dwight Freeney said. And that's how I'm seeing this division.
Well, first question is, are you okay? You're not sick or anything like that?
I'm
No head
really,
cold?
you know what?
No,
I'm
you don't have
feeling
the
so
flu?
strong right
Yeah,
now.
no, but
You
that's
don't
a
have
smart
anything like that.
question. 'Cause
I mean,
that's a very
you
smart
picked
question.
Peyton Manning, Julius and Demarius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, Monty Ball, and that #1 rated offense to be a wild card because of the San Diego Chargers.
Yes, I did.
Because of a conversation you had with Dwight Freeney.
Well, you had the same conversation.
Well,
you could have piggybacked.
Listen. I'm not going to piggyback. I like Dwight Freeney. Known him for years, but I'm here to tell you something right now. That doesn't mean that I think he's going to win the division.
Okay.
Let's put things in its proper perspective. And I do like San Diego, and I do like Keenan Allen, and I do like the fact that Phillip Rivers reemerged. Had a lot to do with Ken Wisenhunt's presence, by the way, at the time before he got the head coaching job in Tennessee. Now, so when I look at the AFC West, of course, is Denver for the reasons that I mentioned, plus the acquisition of Ward Ware and Aqib Talib on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's no question that they're going to be just as good as they were last year. All right? I'm not saying better because I don't know if you can be better offensively, but I definitely think you're going to be just as good. Kansas City, I'm not so sold on. Too many losses, Skip, and I'm looking at some of these things. Dexter McCluster, Dunta Robinson, Jeff Schwartz. Remember, he left for the Giants. He's that guard. And Brandon Flowers is now in San Diego secondary, motivated. He was on with us in L.A.
Yes, he was.
Very, very motivated. You look at San Diego coming off a season. The kind of season that they had, they lost to Denver by just a touchdown, beat Cincinnati by 17
They did.
in the divisional playoff game.
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati deserves a lot of credit. But at the same time, keep in mind, this is the same team that was 5-7 before winning the last 4 games of the regular season.
Okay.
And who were they against? The Giants. Yeah, they beat Denver, Oakland, and then the overtime loss against Kansas City, who really didn't play everybody because they had the division locked up.
Yep.
So it's sort of like, they sort of like backed into the playoffs to some degree, but you got to give them credit for beating Cincinnati and Andy Dalton, who seems allergic to winning a playoff game. So I'm just not as sold on San Diego as you are. I know they have talent. I know they're impressive. I've got them getting the second wild card spot, but not winning the division. I think it's going to be San Diego and Pittsburgh as my wild card.
You do have San Diego as a wild card. smart. So I'm not so sick, I guess,
No,
right?
well,
I guess I'm pretty healthy.
I just want to say, wait, hold
But you
on.
picked them to win the division over Denver. That's why I said
And
that.
he picked the Dallas Cowboys. Did you know that earlier?
Something's wrong with Skip. Something's wrong with him.
Huh.
By the way, I'm going to sum this up with the fact that, what did you tell me that happened to the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl? They got beat down, bum rushed, punked, straight up punked.
Got their heart snatched out of their
snatched
chest.
out of their chest. Are you sure that now your Denver Broncos can bounce back from that? Because the last 2 times John Fox helped coach teams to the Super Bowl, remember the Panthers and the Giants? Neither of those teams even made the playoffs the next year. And you realize we've gone 20 straight years without a team that lost the Super Bowl getting back to the Super Bowl.
Let's stop the nonsense right here. There's no such thing as a team not making the playoffs with Peyton Manning as their quarterback.
Okay.
Let's stop that.
I've got them in the playoffs.
They're gonna make the playoffs, and it's not gonna be a wild card because San Diego has roared through the gates. Sorry.
Well, there's going to be a little beat-down hangover that they're going to have to fight through early this year.
Saturday night, the NASCAR season comes down to Richmond. After 6 grueling months of racing, the playoffs are just a week away. Newman, Biffle, Boyer, and Kyle Larson have one more shot to lock up a spot in the all-new Chase. 43 drivers battle, 16 advance, 1 race to go. The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series at Richmond, Saturday at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific on ABC, presented by AutoZone.
Tom Brady was 27 years old when he won his 3rd Super Bowl with Coach Bill Belichick. 10 years later, he hopes to do the same. The Patriots are the favorites to win the AFC East. New England has dominated the AFC East for the last decade, winning the last 5 titles and 9 of the last 11. No other team in the division has finished above 500 within the last 3 years. Needless to say that they are the favorites. So will New England win a 6th straight AFC East title? Stephen A. Smith, questions for you.
Of course they will, because it's almost by default. Miami's completely irrelevant because they seem to be in flux. We don't know what they're going to do. They haven't looked tremendously good in the preseason. Not sold on Philbin. Even though I like Tannehill, I think he's got the wrong head coach, quite frankly. That's just how I feel about it. And I'm still waiting for Mike Wallace and those boys to live up to the money that they've been given. We'll see what happens, but I'm not sold on Miami. Buffalo, I've been relatively bullish on because I think they can make some noise defensively. Offensively, I still think they're about a year or 2 away. E.J. Manuel's got some developing and growing to do. Sammy Watkins, as much of a stud as he can be, is just a rookie, and he's had some rib injuries on at least 2 occasions during the preseason, so we don't know how healthy, number one, he's going to be at the start of the season. Yep. We don't know how healthy he can stay in terms of the punishment that he's going to take. You are going to get hit in the ribs playing in the NFL as a wide receiver. C.J. Spiller, Freddie Jackson, we understand what they could do, but at the same Fred Jackson, but we understand that, but at the same time, again, I just don't know if they're there. The Jets are incredibly intriguing because even though their cornerback situation is, their secondary situation is horrific. Idzik did not do his job when it comes to that. Didn't get Darrelle Revis, didn't get Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, didn't get Werner, didn't get anybody worth, and they had cap room to do it and didn't pull it off. And so Milliner, because he was Defensive Rookie of the Month in December because he played well, you want to make him the number 1 guy. Dimitri Patterson is somebody that you ended up letting go of because he went AWOL during a preseason game. And I just think that their front 7, as big time as they are, especially with Sheldon Richardson and Muhammad Wilkinson, who are men amongst boys, in the end, what are you going to do offensively? It comes down to Geno or Michael Vick, depending on how long Geno lasts. Chris Johnson, how much does he have left in him? Chris Ivory, we don't know. Eric Decker's basically your number 1 guy. Still an APB out for him. Last time seen, we think it was in East Rutherford, New Jersey for the Super Bowl. We're not sure. The evidence is that he did an interview before the Super Bowl, and he was quoted after the Super Bowl, so one would surmise he was at the Super Bowl.
He may have been there.
He may have been there, yes, but we couldn't find him during the game.
Sure.
So he's your number 1 guy. I just don't know. Based on that alone, we're not even getting into the fact that New England's better. Wolford, Mayo is back. Revis is in the secondary, and offensively they got Tom Brady with the crew. We don't even have to get into all of that. Just by default alone, New England's got the division.
I think it's more than by default. I think it's just by default to the other teams. But wait a second. I thought you were teasing the fact that somebody on this panel didn't think didn't think New England.
That was sarcasm.
It was sarcasm. I was prepared for a bombshell.
You thought he was going to pick the Jets?
I couldn't figure out unless he's going to pick the Dolphins. But then when you said the Jets,
be sarcastic without you having to make her qualify that.
Well, I was poised to pounce. There's nothing to pounce on here.
Did you hear your brother? He was poised to pounce.
Yeah. I mean, this division is closed for repairs except for one team, and that's my New England Patriots. The Patriots will sweep this division cleanly and go 14-2. It's over, because when you add Revis and Browner with Will Fork and Mayo returning to that defense, by the end of the year, that secondary, that deep secondary, it's not as physical as the Boomers up there in Seattle, the Legion, but it might be about as effective as the Legion of Boom secondary by the end of the year, once they start to come together and click. And on offense, Shane Vereen's going to be a fantasy football superstar. He's going to be featured a lot in this offense. And when you add LaFell to a second-year Amendola, and a Kenbrell Tompkins.
You're really banking on Amendola?
Yes, I am. I'm banking on Amendola.
LaFell and Carolina.
I don't know.
Never helped Steve Smith as much as he should.
Brady loves him. He's been volunteering how much he loves him.
And not only that, I mean, come on, a Ridley fumbleitis. We got
then about in week 4 or 5, you'll start seeing more and more of this guy named Gronkowski. They will ease him back in. They will protect him for a while.
I really wish he didn't play.
And then look out. The lights will be out for the rest of the division.
Gronkowski stays out for about 3 or 4 weeks.
He will be eased back in. It will be slowly but surely. And all I need to say is that the New England Patriots still have the best quarterback in all of football. Thank you. Case closed. Next question.
Tom Brady?
Yes, thank you.
Best quarterback.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Giselle.
He's big time.
I was talking about Giselle.
Yeah, he's big time. He just ain't the bad man that Aaron Rodgers is.
This is the baddest.
It has been 10 years.
A year after going from worst to first, the Panthers are voted as the team most likely to go from first to worst this year. History not on their side as well, because no team in the NFC South has ever repeated as NFC South champions. Not only that, their offensive line took a major hit. No wide receivers, secondary hit as well, hit hard by retirements and departures because of free agency. All right, Stephen A. Smith. There is no Steve Smith there for them. Let me ask you this. Who wins that division?
Oh, please. This is almost like asking me about the AFC East. That's exactly the way that I look at the NFC South. New Orleans in a runaway. Nobody can mess with them right now. This high-powered offense, Rajon, the way he's got this defense playing, much improved. Matter of fact, New Orleans is going to be one of my top teams in the NFL, period. And we'll be talking about that in the hours and days to come. But let me be very, very clear. When you look at the rest of this division, Carolina won the division last year. We all saw what Cam Newton did. Had left ankle surgery, clearly isn't the same, isn't 100%. We know this. You combine that he lost his top 4 receivers, Skip. LaFell, Steve Smith, Hickson, and Ted Ginn Jr. I mean, and what do you replace them with? Jericho Cotchery? And I mean, who are these people? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know Cotchery and I know what he could do, but let's stop the nonsense. The weapons are not the same. They are going to struggle miserably offensively. When you look at them on the defensive side of the ball, I look at this dude, Mike Mitchell. He's with the Steelers now. That's a loss for them at free safety. I expect Captain Munnerlyn. They went to Minnesota. They're not going to be the same defensively. I still expect them to be big time, but again, there's something to be said for chemistry, cohesion, etc. I don't know if Carolina is going to have that in loads. As a result, I expect them to struggle tremendously on the offensive side of the ball, to be relatively anemic. I don't think they make the playoffs. I certainly don't think they win the division, obviously. I look at Tampa. Look, Lovie Smith is an upgrade. The defense is going to respond. They lost to Revis. They replaced him with Vernon. I think they'll be fine defensively under Lovie Smith. They're not going to be as pathetic as they were last year, at times anyway. But I think that when you look at them offensively, McCown, I'm not sold on that. I look at Doug Martin. I know he's got potential. Vincent Jackson, we know this. You drafted Mike Evans out of Texas A&M. I get all of that, but I think they're a year away. All right? And so that's just the way I look at it. Now, of course, you can't ignore Atlanta because Julio Jones and Roddy White will return, but they got problems on both line of scrimmage. They got problems getting to the passer. They got problems protecting the passer. And for, facilitating their running game. I think that Atlanta will be improved, but I don't think they'll be back to where they were a couple of years ago. I think they fight with New Orleans a little bit, but ultimately New Orleans wins the division, and they're not good enough record-wise to get that wild card spot. So I see New Orleans being the only playoff team out of this division, winning the division with a 12-win season.
I agree with you on the 12-win season. I have New Orleans winning this division at 12-4. For all the reasons you detailed, I have Cam and company missing the playoffs. Yeah. But where we disagree, you think that Tampa is a year away. I think Tampa's time is now. I think Tampa goes 10-6 and makes a wild card. I got the Buccaneers under Lovie Smith, adding at the last second a Logan Mankins, which was a huge upgrade. Yeah. It was really a basic steal for them. And I think Josh McCown is pretty good. I think he's good enough to make them a 10-6 team. They added Werner on the defensive side, who's big time. Yeah, that's big time. And you mentioned Doug Martin and Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans. This is a pretty good football team with a very good coach. I know you thought in Chicago his time had run out.
Yeah, but I still thought he deserved to be a head coach just somewhere else.
I agree with you, and he does, and he will be a refreshing change there. And all of a sudden, you're going to see them be a factor, and they will push the Saints in that division, but make the wild card.
All right, let's move on, gentlemen, to the AFC South. After taking over a Colts team that won only 2 games, Andrew Luck has led the Colts to 2 straight playoff appearances and the second most wins by a quarterback in his first 2 seasons in NFL history. That's the first time. Well, things look up for the Colts. The Texans are going in the other direction, finishing with the worst record in the NFL last season. So who wins this division, Stephen A?
Well, first of all, Luck doesn't need much luck to win this division. Because, look at it. 2 of the divisions don't have a quarterback, as far as I'm concerned. 2 of the teams, don't have a quarterback. The Jaguars aren't even worth discussing.
Okay.
Just take into consideration, ladies and gentlemen, that the local television station, just an hour away in Orlando, apologized to its local residents for having to show a Jaguars game. Now, Blake Bortles is going to change
that will end this year.
That will end this year because you'll want to watch Blake Bortles. It was a good PR move, but he's also talented. He's the future. I like Blake Bortles. They'll be fine, but obviously him being a rookie, I don't expect but so much from the Jaguars. I just don't, okay? That's number one. The Houston Texans, big time defensively. Jadeveon Clowney explodes off your screen when he explodes off the line of scrimmage. You know him with J.J. Watt, the new $51.8 million in guaranteed dollars, man. You know that he's going to do some damage. Their defense will be improved. The offense, I'm not sure, not so much because you still don't really have a quarterback. Ryan Mallett, stop it. I'm not sold. So in light of that reality, it comes down basically to the Colts and the Titans. One thing about when I look at a guy like Ken Wisenhunt, for example, I see a guy that everywhere he goes, he has a profound effect positively on quarterbacks. Okay? We'll see what that happens with Locko, but it's no Andrew Luck. You got Akeem Nicks on a 1-year deal, anxious to prove himself. You got Reggie Wayne, 35 years of age, coming off of injury, anxious to resurrect himself and to show that he's not finished. Trent Richardson, obviously the numbers aren't there behind the backfield as a running back, anxious to prove himself. Pagano, love him as a coach. Defense, I think, is going to be improved. I'm just saying, I look at them right now, absent Robert Mathis for at least a little while, but I just look at them and I just say, you know something? Of course, the Indianapolis Colts are going to the playoffs, and of course, nobody else from the division is following them.
All of which is why. All those points you just made,
oh boy,
comes down to why Andrew is again lucky. How lucky is Andrew Luck? He's got no competition in this division. It's Indy by default. Can I make a case for Jacksonville? No. For Houston? No. For Tennessee? Maybe. With Wisenhunt, Jake Locker, but will he stay healthy because he tends to turn kamikaze and blow himself up once a season? No. I'm sorry. I can't make a case for Tennessee. So it's over. Way to go, Andrew. Luckily, you back into the playoffs, and then we'll see what happens. And if you throw 7 interceptions in the first 2 playoff games, you might be going home.
If you throw a bunch of touchdowns and come down from a huge deficit to win 45 to 44.
The hole that he dug for his team by throwing 3 interceptions.
Why are you so hard on him?
Andrew Luck's a bad boy. You can't sleep on him.
It's a good year for Andrew Luck.
Aaron Luck. Yes, Aaron Luck. Yeah, your 2 boys together.
Andrew Luck is the future.
Yeah.
Andrew Luck.
Yeah, he better be.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the gentlemen to my left and right have made their picks, division winners, wild cards for the season. So here's a quick recap. Skip, you made Stephen A. fall out of his chair when you picked the Cowboys.
Yep, I love that pick. That's my favorite pick of all my picks.
Is that
That's
your
the
favorite?
one I believe the strongest in.
Okay,
Dallas wins the division.
What about this San Diego Chargers pick? He also said you were sick
pick.
off of that one.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm feeling great. I'm fully healthy with that pick.
All right, Stephen A., you picked the Eagles to win the NFC East. And Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to call him Aaron Luck because I like the combination of the two that you like.
He's
NFC
lucky
North.
too.
He's also a lucky guy. AFC North, you've gone with the Ravens. So let's get right to it. There they are. Let that simmer. Super Bowl 49.
It's time for the big picks.
In Phoenix. We'll be there with shorts on. Who wins? Who's going? Who wins?
Everybody likes to pick the Denver Broncos because of Peyton Manning, that high-powered offense, and the belief that, you know something, you got beat down, punked the way that they did in the Super Bowl. They're going to make amends for it.
Yep.
Hasn't happened in NFL history when somebody loses a Super Bowl, they turn around. I think I don't remember.
1972 last time.
1972 was the last time. Dolphins lost, came back, won the Super Bowl. Miami Dolphins.
Who'd they lose to before they won? Oh, the Dallas Cowboys. Next.
The Dallas Cowboys, Roger Staubach and those boys.
Thank you.
You know, you should remember those days.
Because that's the only days that matter right now.
It's a long time ago. But let me tell you this. Can't see that happening in this particular situation. Obviously, we throw out if somebody's injured because injuries always play a role.
They do.
But I'm assuming Gronkowski's going to be healthy.
Oh.
I'm assuming Brady's not going to get hurt. I'm assuming Darrelle Revis is not going to get hurt.
Are you going where I think you're going?
The New England Patriots
You are?
to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh, no.
The great Robert Kraft.
It's over. I'm
Bill
done.
Belichick and the New England Patriots organization are going back to the Super Bowl this year, representing the AFC. Akeem Talia, he's going, I get that, but you got Revis, you got Wolford, you got Mayo, you've got Belichick. I'm sorry, I'm not loser fan. I look at Brady with Kimbrell Tompkins. I think Danny Amendola, he might actually last come playoff time. He might actually be available. Miracles do happen. Gronkowski, I'm assuming, is going to be available. Vereen with Ridley will be available. I think that New England is the better team. I think they got more heart, and I think they're going to show up when it counts, and New England will represent the AFC. Now,
do you have them beating Denver to get there? You didn't
if Denver runs into them, they'll take them out.
Okay.
New England's going to take them out. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter who New England plays.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it's my Steelers, New England's going to the Super Bowl.
That's it.
Now with the NFC,
yes,
everybody talking about Seattle. I love the Legion of Boom.
Uh-oh.
It's some bad boys.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere.
No, some bad boys.
That
no
forearm right to the head?
Yeah, it's coming
That's
for
right.
you. They're coming for you.
Cam is about to come for you right now.
Cam and those boys are no joke.
You're going
But
with the Saints?
I think the New Orleans
You
Saints.
are going with the Saints.
I think the New Orleans Saints somehow, some way, will capture the #1 seed.
It better be in New Orleans.
That's the only way this will happen.
I understand.
I'm willing to concede that if New Orleans has to go to Seattle, this is all null and void. But if Seattle, even though I said 13-3 in New Orleans 12-4, I might have to switch that around.
You might have to.
Because I believe in that New Orleans will have the #1 seed in the NFC.
Yep.
And if the road to the Super Bowl has to come to New Orleans, which I believe it will, the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees will represent the NFC and meet Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. Drew Brees
2 minutes
versus Tom Brady.
And? Or you want me to go and then you'll tell me at the end who wins?
All right, 2 minutes ago.
Okay. I already told you, I have the Seahawks going 15-1 to New Orleans 12-4. So that game, which I do think will be the NFC Championship game, will be played in that crazy place up in the Northwest.
Oh, boy.
New Orleans has no chance. This is Seattle, start to finish, 15-1. They will roll to the Super Bowl. Now, on the other side of the coin, I'm very upset that you have hexed my New England Patriots by picking them. You have doomed them by picking them, and I think you did it just because you wanted to hex my Patriots, because we know what happens to your Super Bowl picks.
They're like this.
Okay.
They're the boat.
I've got the Patriots beating San Diego in the AFC Championship game in Foxborough, just the way they did. Remember, following the 2007 season, they beat San Diego to get to the Super Bowl and lost to your Giants. Remember when they were trying to go undefeated? That will repeat. So I have the Patriots versus the Seahawks. I am not going to jinx my Patriots by picking them to win the Super Bowl. So I have Seattle winning that game, a game that will be much better than the contest Denver put up against Seattle. But I have Seattle winning that game 24-23 only because I don't want to jinx my Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Wait, hold on. Your back talk means you really want them to win, though.
I want them to win.
But
I actually believe, don't tell anybody this, but I believe New England will win the Super Bowl.
It's a
but I'm not going to say it publicly.
That's so weak.
He said, well,
That's
you know
so
how he
weak.
does.
How's that going to happen?
Yeah. You hacked them once. I'm going to hack them twice.
I got New England beating New Orleans in the Super Bowl 37-33.
You just picked the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. It's over. Done. They got no shot. The New England Patriots are done for this year. They will all get hurt. They will crumble right before your very eyes because this man picked them to win the AFC
Excuse me.
and the Super Bowl.
I wasn't right with